Hey guys, so in this video I'll be reviewing Dauntless, which is a free-to-play co-op monster hunting RPG along the lines of a multiplayer Monster Hunter. So the gameplay itself basically boiled down to these boss fights against these behemoths, against these monsters, and the sort of in-town RPG elements where you upgrade your characters, weapons, gear, and so on. The gameplay basically involves getting better gear to fight harder behemoths, or to get better gear, and so on. And you also have some build making and those kind of things. So that being said, the harder behemoths do have some other mechanics as well. So they aren't like literally the same monsters with more health and damage. They do have a couple other twists and turns. However, if you are interested in grinding and to upgrade your gear, if you are interested in fighting some more behemoths again and again, this might not be the game for you. There are currently 7 different weapons for you to try, although they do plan to eventually have 8. Overall, I think they've done a good job of making the weapons sort of different from each other, making them sort of play in different ways. Some of them are slow, hard hitters, some of them are faster weapons. I personally prefer the faster weapons. I'd recommend those for new players because dodging and timing those dodges is incredibly important for this game in order to stay alive. But if you prefer slow hitting, stronger weapons, they're obviously there as well. Weapons themselves seem a little unbalanced at higher levels right now, but you can definitely work all the way to the top with whatever weapon you want. You don't really need to care about which weapon you play as, other than personal preference. When you get to the top and you want to min-max a bit. Also some different modifiers to each weapon that you can unlock as you play through the game, and you can play around with how the weapon feels, what kind of special the weapon has, those kind of things with these modifiers that add some more variety to the game. So a lot of the exploration and learning in the game comes from fighting different behemoths, sort of learning their attacks and moves so you can dodge them, as well as learning different combos and how to best use whatever weapon you prefer, or how to best use all the weapons if you are curious in that way. You'll probably get smacked around a lot by behemoths when you first start playing. Whenever you fight a new behemoth you don't fully understand, but over time you learn to dodge, you learn the tells, you learn how to expect attacks, learn how to interrupt these behemoths, and it makes the gameplay more rich and makes the game pretty fun to play. The in-town RPG element itself, I would say, is nothing extraordinary or that special, but it definitely works well and it's fun in my opinion. And each behemoth has their own armor and their own weapons with some unique effects. You can sort of customize them and upgrade them as you will. You need the parts from each behemoth in order to upgrade their respective armor or weapon. So that's sort of what gear, that's sort of what loot you get from the behemoths is their part that you can use to make their weapons, make their armor. Part of this looting system is also kind of cool in the sense of you want to get certain parts from the behemoth, they might drop from a certain body part of the behemoth. So if you want to get some certain drop that only comes from the tail of the behemoth, you have to break the tail, you have to attack the tail during the fight. That sort of adds an element of strategy, adds some more stuff to do in the gameplay besides just, attack whatever part of the behemoth. Attacking certain parts can give you certain things. Eventually, as you play more, you can create builds with different infusions you can place in your armor and your weapons and your lantern, and sort of comboing the armors and the weapon and the lantern that you have, different effects that they have in order to, do whatever you want. So if you want to do a bunch of wound damage, you can run a wound build. If you want to do a dodging build, heal on dodge, increase your attack power on dodge, you can run a build like that as well. There's also a lot of character customization in the way of cosmetics, but a lot of those are tied behind microtransactions that I'll talk about a little bit later in this video. There's also a simple elemental sort of counter system in the game, so some weapons will have certain elemental effects that will make them stronger or weaker against certain types of behemoths, and the behemoths themselves also have an elemental effect, making them stronger or weaker against certain weapons, against certain armor types. So for example, if you have a fire weapon, that's very good against ice behemoths, but fire armor is weak against ice behemoths, so you want to have ice armor instead. There's also some consumables, a little bit of crafting in the game, in the way of you can gather these plants, these materials before you fight each behemoth, and there's a little bit of touch of exploration before each hunt where you sort of look for the behemoth, and you can gather these materials, these ingredients during that time, but it's sort of a more minor part of the game. You can also purchase these consumables on later levels when you're later on in the game, and they're really cheap, so it's not a game where you ever are afraid to use consumables. There's not really any grinding for consumables. It's very easy to always have a lot of consumables for each run, for each behemoth fight that you have. So it's one of the few games out there that's fully cross-platform. I'm not sure if it has mobile, but it does have Switch, PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox all in one game because it's published by Epic, so they sort of can force that through with their Fortnite influence. Definitely a game that benefits from playing with friends. You don't really have any bad pugs or whatever, but you can also solo hunt as well, so you can fight each behemoth on your own. As a whole, I've been playing with pugs exclusively pretty much, a couple of solo fights, but that's it, and I've only really had a few problems with it. So the pugs in this game seem to be decent as a whole, but some of them are really bad, some of them will be good, as it always goes with pugs. There isn't really much in the way of lore or story in the game, which is kind of a shame in my opinion because it feels like the world has a lot of potential to build something up there, but it clearly is not something that they focus on really at all in the game. There's a lot of things they sort of set up that are just questions that are unanswered, but it is what it is. Also, the game is way buggier than it should be. It's buggier than I expected. It's usually not sort of game-breaking bugs, but usually there's kind of annoying, like things like getting stuck on other players or some weird terrain glitching where it doesn't expect you to jump. But it doesn't usually affect the fight with the behemoth itself, so in that sense it's usually fine, but it can be a little annoying to not be as polished as you might expect. Also, the game is really distilled into the RPG side and the behemoth fight. So it's basically just, building your character, upgrading it, and fighting the monsters, fighting the bosses. There's not really that much in the way of exploration. There's not really that much in the variety of gameplay and those kind of things. So if that's what you're looking for, it can be great. But if you're looking for more variety, there's not that much there. There's a couple different types of hunts, a couple different types of fights, but they mostly vary in terms of rewards, not that much in terms of the actual mechanics of the fight. There is one mode called Escalation, which is a little bit different because you fight your way through harder and harder behemoths, but as a whole, there's not that much in the way of gameplay variety, beside variety between fighting each different type of behemoth. There is currently an Easter event that doesn't involve any behemoths at all, but that's sort of a seasonal thing and not something that's a mainstay in the game. Because that's fairly simple overall in terms of what's in the game, and perhaps that lack of variety might turn some people away, but I think it's kind of fun as it is, and I haven't gotten bored of it yet, so take that for what you will. I thought it'd be a good idea to touch on the new player experience as well, what it's like for new players who are just getting into the game. There is a lot of good guided progression through trying certain behemoths and sort of leveling up and things like that. It doesn't fall into the trap of some RPGs where it's, go level yourself for a couple hours and then come back and we can do something else next. I think it sort of guides you through the leveling pretty straightforward in a way where you don't ever feel like you need to go grind out, you're sort of floundering or confused with what you need to do. It also sort of forces you to fight all different behemoths, sort of forces you to try different weapons. So in that way, it's really making you explore the game and sort of learn a lot from it. Although, obviously there are a few occasional jumps in difficulty, but overall, I think the new player experience is done pretty well. That being said, you do kind of need to teach yourself a couple of game mechanics. So for example, I didn't realize until about 10 hours in that the health potion and the self-revive consumables replenish with each game. So I wasn't using them at first because, I didn't want to waste the consumables. I wasn't sure how hard the consumables were to make, how hard they were to get, but stuff like that where I had to sort of learn it on my own. And it seems like this wasn't just me, because sometimes I'll still be fighting some high-level behemoths now, like 30 hours in or whatever that I played. And sometimes people still won't seem to be using their health potions, won't seem to self-revive. And it seems like these people might not know that these replenish. They might not know they can use them without any sort of long-term penalty or long-term cost of replenishing them or anything like that. Additionally, there isn't really any sort of training ground or some way to try new weapons. You kind of have to learn them on the fly when you're fighting some behemoths. So you really want to, there is a page in the game where you can sort of see all the combos, the nitty-gritty of the weapon that you're playing with. So you want to kind of read over those controls carefully several times, because otherwise you miss some very important things. Maybe you might miss what attacks interrupt, you might miss how to use the special, and special is usually one of the more powerful parts of the weapon. And so understanding how the weapon actually works, you need to really read through that. It doesn't really teach you that much in the game itself, which is a little bit of a shame, but it's not that hard to explore it on your own, and the information is there. You just have to find it for yourself. So now let's talk about the microtransactions in Dauntless. So because it's a free-to-play game, it has microtransactions. They have to make some money somehow, right? So the game is developed by Phoenix Labs, but it's published by Epic Games. And you can see a lot of similarities in the monetization of Dauntless and the monetization of Fortnite. So like Fortnite, most of the game's in-app purchases are cosmetics, and there's also a hunt pass, which is the equivalent of a battle pass or the season pass. And it's also the same price as the battle pass, so it's $9.50 worth of in-game currency. Cosmetics in the shop and in the hunt pass vary a lot from sort of armor skins, weapon skins, skins for silly things like your flare design, your flare color, or in-game boosts or other things along those lines. So like the battle pass, the hunt pass also returns some premium currency, although only returns half the price of the hunt pass. Still, it's a nice return to have. It's nice to have the season pass give you some premium currency back to you. While these cosmetics galore in the shop is pretty standard and probably won't upset that many people, there is sort of a mild pay to win element potential in this game. So you can't pay to raise your damage, you can't pay to raise your armor cap, anything like that, but you can pay to reduce the grind of it. So for example, if you have the hunt pass, you get a little bit of extra loot with each hunt, and that sort of obviously you get more loot, reduces the grind need to level up a little bit. But also a couple in-game timers that you can speed up with some premium currency by paying money, and sort of akin to a mobile game, but I've never felt the need to use any of those, so I'm not sure that it's really that big of a deal compared to some other games. Obviously prefer not to have that element in there, but it seems to be done not too bad. I would say overall, it seems like the kind of game where if you spend a small amount of money buying the hunt pass and a couple other things, it sort of helps you, it makes the game better. But more than that, I don't really think it's necessary. I personally ended up spending $5 on a starter pack in order to get the hunt pass, and I haven't spent anything else besides that. I haven't really felt like I needed to spend anything else besides that. The microtransactions aren't necessary that much or aren't obnoxiously in your face, but you won't forget they're there, and spending a little bit can actually help you pay to win in the sense that it'll reduce the grind a little bit. Now for my overview, summary, and sort of verdict on Dauntless. So I've had a lot of fun playing Dauntless recently. It's been my most played game for the past few weeks, and I'll probably keep playing it for a while, I expect. It's a good distilled monster hunting co-op RPG with just boss fights and, the RPG elements, but it was a little buggier than I would expect that it really should be for this type of game. That being said, it's distilled, so it's a little simple. It can potentially be a little repetitive if you get sick of grind easily, or if you are someone who really needs a lot of variety in games. Additionally, while the microtransactions are mostly cosmetic, it does have a touch of pay to win that can be off-putting for some. But, if you want a game that's basically boss fights, you want a game you can play with friends, cross-platform, it's definitely a fun game to check out. It's free to try, so there's not that much harm there in terms of trying it. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please like this video. If you want to see more of my reviews, I'll link some playlists in the description below, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this and help me out. So, thanks.